Office hours. Thank you for taking the time to join us. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Alyssa Castro, the Director of Partner Success here at PIA. My role is focused on helping partners move from ideas and interests into real, measurable adoption and outcomes. Today's office hours are focused on custom development. This is an area we've seen a lot of curiosity around, especially recently, as partners like yourselves start thinking beyond out of the box use cases and want PIA to work more closely with how their service desk actually operates. So before we dive in, housekeeping items. This is meant to be interactive. So please drop questions in the Q&A section as we go, and then y'all can chat away in the chat box. And we'll try to answer questions live as it's appropriate, but we'll definitely have time at the end for open Q&A. And the goal of today's session is pretty simple. We are here to help you understand what custom development is with PIA, when it makes sense to explore it, how partners are using them responsibly and successfully today, and what the process actually looks like from idea to delivery. And we've got a good demo section of today as well. This is not about building something complex just for the sake of it. It's about solving very specific problems that don't quite fit inside standard workflows while still keeping things scalable and supportable. I'm joined today by Tom and Adam.
Do you want to go first, Adam?
Sure,
Just
I'll kick it
introduction.
off. Hey, everybody. I hope everybody's walking on some sunshine this afternoon or whatever time it is. But I'm Adam. I'm a partner success manager here at PIA. And my main objective is to help you push adoption, run automations, and kind of be there for any kind of support that you need from a partnership level. I love talking best practices and helping our partners see the true ROI with PIA.
Fantastic, thanks. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom. I'm one of the AI automation specialists here at PIA. I've been here a few years now. Well, quite a few of you know me from just like some of the training videos, some of the training sessions that you kind of run with us. Typically, it'll be myself or one of my team. They'll take you through essentially a kind of a deeper version of what we're going to do today, which is talking about custom automations, custom scripts, development, and how to get absolutely everything you can out of the kind of the platform when you get to that point where you want to build something custom, right? Absolutely, that is where my passion lies. And as you'll notice, both from my calls and from here today, I'm gonna ramble. I'm just gonna chat about it for forever. I'm not gonna stop. But that's me.
Oh, that's exactly what we want today. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Adam. All right. Before we kick things off, or as we kick things off, let's kick things off with a poll to get a sense of the room today. So I'm going to launch this. Go ahead and pick which custom development you would prefer for us to demo today during our demo section. And while y'all are voting and reading through those, let's set a bit of context around what we mean by custom development.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in and kind of kick us off here. Custom development, custom creation, custom packages. It's a very broad. It's a very kind of open, kind of large topic. Now, we generally use this to describe anything that's been built in Peer really, but specifically purpose-built automations and workflows. These can take many forms. We've got chatbot type automations and smart forms, as you guys are likely aware. We also have extensions, which are incredibly powerful. They add functionality while still keeping the original parent in place and supported and updated by us. And then there are some kind of more hidden gems in there as well. Anything from your scheduled reports to something that kicks off automatically when a ticket comes in. Now, generally, a lot of partners move into this space because they get to a point where it's something that potentially peer doesn't cover out of the box, but they always have that specific need. And we've seen a lot of things get built that are either pretty general use case where they kind of go into the automation hub or they start to get shared on our community Discord, or some that are very specific for partner MSP bases, and some that are just very specific for particularly client use cases, right? These are especially the areas where you're going to want to go to potentially build something custom. Ideally, and what we'll kind of talk about a little bit today, is when you build these kind of workflows, obviously you want to solve that niche, but you want to solve it long term. You don't necessarily want to build something that solves a 5 minute issue. It took you 4 hours to build, right? That's just kind of makes a little bit of sense. So that's essentially what we're going to be kind of talking about here. Now, in that vein, when do these kind of custom creations kind of make sense, right? I say that's very official. I like to call it when is the juice worth the squeeze? Essentially. And that is going to be very much when are you getting the largest ROI out of the time you're going to put into the generation of these particular workflows? And for a lot of partners, when we get to that point, when we start to work at that point, and we look at, well, P is automating a lot of things, your user management, your password resets, your onboardings, your offboardings, it's good stuff. But after that's taken care of, what's the next most painful ticket? The thing that costs the most amount of time for the least amount of return for the service desk. And that is where you start aiming and saying, right, well, that's the first thing that I want to achieve. We do have the old partner who come in, they'll be like, you know what, I've got this product, I've got this API. I'm excited to work with it. It's going to look pretty cool. I'm going to plug in Chat GPT. I'm going to do this kind of stuff. And use my answer is, well, fantastic. What's that solving for you? And I'll be honest, I've had a few just come be like, oh no, it's just cool, which I 100% respect. Like, absolutely, I respect that. But ultimately, the best bang for your buck is going to be going after those larger kind of ROI drains from the service desk itself. Now, when don't they make sense, right? That's when we want to go for it. When does it not? And it's those one-off edge cases are the things that excite that kind of draws people into building these things, because it can take some time to build and to test. We'll talk a little bit about the methods to test things and the best way to go about certain builds as well. That's be the kind of the scope and the time that you want to put into these kind of automation builds. And you want to make sure that, like we said, right, you're not solving a 5-minute issue with a 4-minute development. If that 5-minute issue is coming up several times a day, then absolutely, this is a really good way to get that cleared out, right? But ultimately, you want to make sure you're focusing in the right place. Now, as you guys know from me, and you'll definitely get a sense of it if you don't from this session here, is I'm much more on the technical side. That's where I spend most of my time. That's where I like to do things. But as I kind of alluded to, there's a much larger part to this as well, which is the process. It's the scope. It's the management around a particular project. And to talk a little bit on that, Adam, I'll let you come in here as well to just give us a few pointers on how that kind of looks, how we like to structure things, and the sort of things you hear from our partners as well.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for the delivery on that. I'd say to start, when we start looking at the process and the initial conversation around custom development, it starts with that cadence our partners have with me and all of our other partner success managers. Whether you're reviewing the adoption report and seeing those statistics and having that conversation around the next step, what can we build out to save that initial set of time? So that's where we really kick it off. It's a conversation you'll have directly with a partner success manager. And then following that, we can work together with the partner to book a dedicated time to review some of the custom automations with probably somebody like Tom, who would be on the call for about an hour. You'd run through what you were looking for and what you're looking to customize and have a nice breakdown of that. So with those two things, obviously from this initial conversation around it to setting up the custom automation call, there's a few other tactics our partners can take a look at as they either wait for that call or look to develop that custom automation. Reviewing our knowledge base for an overview on the configuration is a super helpful tool, not only just custom stuff, but all PIA products, PIA initiatives, objectives is fully in our knowledge base. So that's a really good piece to use for our partners, as well as the PIA Dev Connect Discord community for our partner suggestions, any assistance. It's a really cool community for our partners to share different ideas on different topics as well. And if you're just in line and would like to have an idea or any ideas for a feature request in the future, we also have an ideas portal for our partners to mention that as well.
Absolutely. Well said, man. On that point, actually, guys, the Discord, I want to plug out one more time. Absolutely fantastic community. Really, really recommend jumping in there. The first thing I actually want to take you through. So we've actually seen the results of the request. We're going to be looking at an extension, which I think is actually a winning idea. That's incredibly powerful. We'll talk about that. But the first thing I will actually want to take you guys through today is something that's actually popped up on that Discord a couple of times over the last kind of couple of weeks, month or so. And that is all about dynamic logic within the workflow of your automation. It's all very good having step 1, 2, and 3, and it runs through and does step 1, then does step 2, and does step 3. If that accomplishes your goal, fantastic. But very quickly you're going to get into this place where sometimes you don't run step 2. You want to go from 1 to 3, depending on the answers that are given by the client or by the engineer, or just the environment variables from the client themselves. So we're going to take a look at a very quick, very basic little kind of automation that basically leverages three different ways to adapt that kind of logic throughout the function itself, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and then we'll move on to the extension automation example. So let me go ahead and share my screen. If I can find the button in Zoom, it always hides from me. There it is. That'll be the screen there. Fantastic. All right. So obviously, I'm using ConnectWise as our kind of PSA as our base of what we're kind of doing today. As you guys are all very aware, Pia connects to several other PSAs. So if it's not yours, don't worry. Functionality-wise, everything I'm doing is, of course, global across the board. Now, we're going to start by running a very simple, very, very small kind of automation. And we're going to be looking at skips, loops, and stops. Some of you I already know because I recognize some of the names in the attendee list. I looked at this and gone, I know how to do this. Absolutely. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. It's one of those things we don't touch on it massively inside our training examples unless they come up specifically. And some of the guides on them are actually a little hidden in the environment. So if you don't know about these, it can really impact your ability to be able to create dynamic automations, right? So we're going to run through a couple of examples. Obviously, as things go, if you guys want to throw hearts and thumbs and chat every time I'm speaking, that's fine. I like that. But if you have questions and thoughts as we go through as well, chuck them in the chat and we'll definitely have some time to kind of go over those. So we're going to go ahead and kick off this automation here. And we're just going to use our very first example, which is going to be skips, right? We have, do you want to skip the next step? I did say this was going to be a simple example, right? It's definitely going to be pretty simple. But we have, do you want to skip the next step? If I say no, then we get our next step here and says, here it is, the end, good stuff. If I run that again, and this time I say, right, well, this time I do want to skip that step because it's just here it is. You know, it's not particularly helpful in terms of what I'm doing today. We just go straight to the end. Now, again, this is an incredibly simple example, but this is where you can immediately start building this logic in, because if you have a step that's going in front of the engineer, maybe a field that's been added to your smart form in terms of, hey, do you want to add forwarding to this user's mailbox as part of your user termination, right? You want to be able to adapt that dynamically. You don't want to have to just give that answer to the engineer and then they have to go and run the automation to do it, because then they're still utilizing their time to do it. We have the information, so why not make it automatic? And you can leverage the skip attribute to jump over tasks that are not needed under that particular condition. Now, I'm not just going to show you the flashy, I'm going to show you the back end as well, right? So let's take a look. If we hop into our Pia portal here, we'll hop into our package editor and we'll take a look at the skips, loops, and stops package that we've just basically run. Again, it is on the simple side, it's pretty small. But we have our three chat interactions here. You can see we've got our first text of do we want to skip the next step? We're using a yes/no form. Then we have our chat interaction saying here it is, and our final one saying the end. This is the one that we skip, and it's because we're utilizing this skip logic in here. Really, very basic. Every single task you can do in Pia, whether that's custom, whether that's platform tasks that we have, whether it's some of our pre-built activities, almost 400 of those, by the way, for someone that wasn't aware. But you can use it on absolutely any of them. And anytime you pass a variable into this particular input that reads as true, it will skip that step. Simple, right? Very, very simple, very, very easy to use. But the power that unlocks, just being able to skip over a step if it's not needed, is massive. It is really, really cool. Side note, by the way, this is what a lot of people use, or several of the MSPs that I worked with has used. If you build, talking about efficiencies and kind of longevity of maintenance on a package, if you build a package that can skip certain steps and behave and alter its behavior based on who runs it, where it's run, what it's got, what information it has, then you only have to build one. You don't have to build a smartphone version of the automation and a chatbot. You can build one that just skips one or the other interaction based on whatever the client might be doing at the time. So this is essentially where that can kind of come in. Now, what we'll move on to is the loop condition. Now, this one is incredibly, incredibly cool. I've used it myself a couple of times. It is the most technical of the three. And it essentially allows you to, as the name implies, it essentially allows you to loop through a set of tasks a set number of times. Now, initially, this might not sound like a particularly big deal, right? Well, I don't want to loop through several steps. The whole point of automation, I do it once and I move on. Good stuff. But the reason you might loop is, let's say, for example, you have an automation that says, hey, I need to, prompt like a health check on some machines. I need to deploy some updates. I need to do something, or I need to audit a couple of mailboxes or something like this. a lot of the peer automations out of the box are one-time use, right? You select your user and bang, and off you go. You might want to have an automation where you can select multiple machines, multiple mailboxes, and run the same task against each one in turn, again, just building on that efficiency. So before we go too deep into the code here, let's go ahead and make sure I save this, because if I have any failings at all, it's going to be that I forget to save every single time I'm doing these tests. And let's just go ahead and run our skips, loops, and stops one more time here. So we'll run this again. And this time, Peter's going to pop up and say, how many loops would you like? It's like the assembly of the world's most automated cereal. So let's say, for example, we'll go for 5 loops. Right? We'll go ahead and hit go. And what P is going to do is it's going to loop for a particular task 5 times for me, and then it's going to end. Pretty simple, right? It's really quite simple. But of course, the power this unlocks is anytime I pass in multiple items to a particular automation, whether that's users, mailboxes, machines, any kind of endpoint you might want to be querying, I can now query it multiple times in turn and then end when I'm done. I don't have to give it a specific number. I don't have to say, oh, yeah, keep going until we're done, and then hopefully we're done in that time or it ends or whatever. I can dynamically adjust the length of the loop every single time I run. Right? If I go in here and I'm going to go for some skip loops and stop, again, assemble my serial, and I do this, it's going to, I'm not actually going to do this because we'll be here for a while, but that would go for a long time, right? It can adapt to whatever number it is that I give it. And the way that we do this is via a very small task simply called loop. Now, if we take a look at loop, let's run 1, 2, and then it'll finish up. There we go. You notice that, by the way, my connection's a little on the off, by the way. If you do notice that, it's because I'm on mobile right now. So I do apologize. If I disappear, I'll be back as soon as I can. But there you go. There's a kind of couple of loops there. And if
Hey,
we take a
Tom.
look, oh yes, Melissa, yeah.
Yeah, real quick. You said a set number of times, but can I, Nathan, do it do it on a for each? For example, take each member of group X and do the needful for each.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the way that we typically like to do it, so the way that my code does it is it's basically just indexing each time. It increments it by 1 every single time. And once I get up to a certain level, which is my input of count, then I essentially return a false and I do not proceed through the loop this time. What you would do if you had a list of, let's say, for example, mailboxes or users in the group, to your example, you would essentially say, right, as long as the index number is less than the total count of users in that group, then the condition for loop is true, which means it will loop. Once it gets to that point, it will run the last user. And since they will no longer be less than, it will be equal then, it will stop at that point and it will continue on to the end of the automation. So it will really adapt to any number that you give it essentially in that point. So anything you want to do, it will kind of continue to loop.
And
I think there is a limit of 500, if I remember correctly. But I'm only aware of one person who's ever got that high.
and can you cancel the package during the run?
You can.
Yeah.
Absolutely can. Yeah. So anytime, as with any peer package, if you do ever kick something off, because I will admit, I've been in that scenario where I've kicked off a loop and something's wrong with my code, something's wrong with what I'm doing, and it just didn't stop. It just kind of kept going. So absolutely you can kill the package from within the chatbot itself. Using the little kind of cancel current request would kill it there. And you can also use live package to do that as well. That is true for everything custom, smart forms, chatbot, everything P has out of the box. If you ever need to kill it, you always have that kill switch handy if you do. So if we take a quick look at the code here, I won't go too deep into the PowerShell itself. We're basically just indexing up our kind of output here. What's interesting in this particular point, before we do move on, is you'll notice this inline PowerShell is called loop start. That's the alias that I've given it. That's the way I want to refer to this particular task. The input for this task is the output from itself. If you imagine the snake eating its own tail, Ouroboros, for example, we're essentially taking the output from this task, the previous run of this task, and ingesting it. That's how we can increment it by 1 each time it comes through. Okay, so when we get down here and we essentially say, right, our condition is the output of our loop start, which is true if our number is less than whatever count we gave it, then it will go back to the activity called loop start, ingesting the output of loop start, which is our index here, and then essentially just continuing on until we hit this output here, which is our loop output false. And as you can see, I've actually leveraged the same skip in here as well, so that I don't show loop number is X when I essentially get to the end and I no longer have any loops to go through. I'm utilizing that same skip logic here. Once this turns to true or to false, I no longer need to run that particular step, so I skip it at that point. That way, we're kind of combining the two. Again, very powerful. Doesn't come up a lot. Honestly, people don't mention it too much. It doesn't come up in our training, but there's almost every single time I'll talk to a partner about something they're trying to do, I'm always like, a loop would be an interesting way to do that. Like anytime you're processing large amounts of information, perhaps for some sort of report, having this there is really cool. It makes things a lot more efficient than having an engineer having to run a particular task multiple times. Like that. Now, what we'll do is we will comment this one out, just like that. And we'll move on to our last one, which is the early stop. Now, this one again is one that's a bit more well known, I would say, from the loop itself, but isn't always very well utilized. So a lot of times, if you have a package and it can do two things, right? Maybe it does either forwarding or mailbox access, depending on the information that's being given. Well, you might have steps 1 to 5 is your mailbox forwarding, and then steps 5 to 10 is your mailbox access. Now, if they don't need your forwarding, then you can skip the first 5 and move straight on to the last 5. And vice versa, you could do the same thing. You could say, I'm going to run the first 5, and then I'm going to skip the others. Now, depending on what you're trying to do, depending on how many tasks there is, if a couple, it's not too bad. But if it's quite a large automation, and I've seen some doozies out there from partners that built. Some of you guys have built incredibly huge, complex stuff. If you're halfway down there and you still have 700 lines and 40 tasks, you don't really want to have to add a skip to every single one of those. So what you can do is you can actually give Pia this stop condition, this stop task here, which will essentially cause the package to exit at that point without processing any further steps below. So again, if we go ahead and save this and we just take a quick look at our example, we'll pop this open, head into skip loops and stops. This time it's just going to ask me, do you want to reach the end? A little ominous, perhaps. Let's say yes, the first time. And we're going to get through. There's the end. Good stuff. We've reached it. If we do it one more time, this time we hit no, our package is actually going to exit at an earlier point and not reach it. That chat interaction down here that just literally said the end, that was never skipped. We just never got there. Our package exited at the earlier point. Now, for standard automations, this can be quite handy to adapt that logic, as I mentioned. But where this also comes in really handy is the stop condition has an input called stop parent. So if you're building an extension automation, and you essentially say, hey, right, at a certain point, I want to stop this automation. Maybe it's the onboarding, you're looking for approval, you're looking for confirmation of changes before you go ahead. I can have my extension stop the parent, stop the user onboarding process entirely if it doesn't have a particular condition or pass a certain check. That way, you don't have to rely on the engineers quickly hitting that cancel package if something goes wrong or something doesn't meet up or having to undo the changes. You can literally code that into your extension. Say, if this doesn't meet this condition, if we don't have approval, then we can exit the package immediately without processing the rest of it. So again, another really cool condition to use here. Just brings that element of kind of efficiency, of kind of dynamic logic and efficiency to kind of to your package. So I know these were pretty light examples. I know there's a couple of people in the chat are like, this is boring stuff. I know this stuff. And I don't. But not everyone does. And it's always a good thing to brush up on these kind of things just because they do bring so much to the automation themselves.
Tom, real quick, I had one question
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up with you on that. What's the most common mistake partners make when they're building their first custom package, and how can they avoid that?
That's a really good question. I would say the most common mistake that most partners make, and I'm going to be honest, this is a little bit caused by the way we run our training. There is a main difference between when you build scripts, when you build custom PowerShell scripts in Pia. As a lot of you may know, there's actually two ways to do it. One of which is like we've done here, we have a little bit of kind of custom PowerShell just in our YAML, in our package editor itself. We have our kind of PowerShell here. And the other way is to build a custom activity. Now, the custom activity does take a little longer to build. It's a little bit more complex. But the efficiency that you unlock by doing that is you can call that same script, kind of like a standard PowerShell function, right? You can call that script multiple times. There is a lot of times when partners will build something like this, and then essentially when you need to use that same logic again, we'll copy and paste it, and you end up with these multiple different versions of essentially the same function, which then have to be updated, kind of going forwards. The reason I say it's kind of a fault of the trading is that we do use inline PowerShell a lot during the training session because it's a little bit of a time saver, but it's also easier to see the code and the flow all on a single page. But I know that some of the partners that I've kind of worked with have gone through and started building with our inline PowerShells, and then essentially been like, right, I have to kind of build it again for this package and again for this package. So I would say the biggest mistake is essentially not planning ahead and building efficiently, not in a bad way, as in like people don't plan. It's just that there are multiple tools to get the job done, and sometimes the most obvious one that you've seen before isn't always the best way to go. If that makes sense. Again, I rambled a bit there, but I think that kind of came together. But does that answer your question there?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Tom.
Fantastic. All righty. In that case, let's pivot. Let's take a look at
Yeah.
the one that everyone kind of voted for, right? Which was the one-time secret integration as an extension to our password reset. This one is really, really big. This one is actually, if anyone kind of wants it and wants to have a bit of play with it, it's actually in our automation hub. Zoom keeps moving the poll in front of my screen, so I'm going to try and get it over there. If it keeps interrupting, I apologize. But this one is actually part of our automation hub. So if you jump into the hub right now on your P attendance and search for what I think it's under one-time secret. There it is. Send credentials via one-time secret for staff onboarding. I don't know if there's a second one or if you can apply this one to the password reset as well, but essentially it is the exact same automation. So you can essentially go in there and grab it right now and have a bit of a play and look at the code while we're taking a look at it. And this particular one we want to talk about is really good for several reasons because it actually encompasses several areas of the development space within Peer. And this is another one, Adam, that I think a lot of partners are aware of, but not many people take advantage of as much as they possibly could. Right? And that is the ability to connect to third-party API systems within Peer. This can be absolutely huge. As you guys probably know, like the API landscape for a lot of vendors over the last few years has absolutely exploded. There are so many things you can do with all of the vendors that you use at the moment. And you can connect every single one of those into Peer. Right? Anytime you have keys, you have URLs, you have secrets, you have passwords, whatever that you want to connect into Peer to be able to utilize that connection, you can do it. You can do it in here. Now we actually have one created already for one-time secret. Now, one-time secret, again, is part of the automation hub. So when you grab that Peer pack, you'll get this integration as well. And this is simply allows me to store the API secrets for my account in one-time secret inside Peer, which is already fantastic, right? I don't have to put them in plain text in my script. I don't have to ask the engineer for them or anything when I'm running an automation. I can just store them in Peer and know that my automation is going to grab them when it requires it. Side note, by the way, you can also store these on a per client configuration as well. So if you do have different sets of keys for different products for different clients, you can store them in here on a per client basis, and Peel will always pull the one that is related to the client under the context of the ticket that you're running. So if you run a ticket for your own MSP, it'll pull your keys. If you pull it for, or you run a ticket for one of your clients, it'll pull their keys. So again, you don't have to end up with multiple different packages there. Peer is intelligent enough to give you the keys that you need at the time. So we have our integration here for one-time secret. It's got my username, my password, and the base URL that I'm going to be utilizing for my automation here. And the way this essentially works, if you guys haven't heard of one-time secret before, it's a pretty good, fantastic system. It's completely free as is their API. There's quite a few solutions that do similar things. They're basically the whole, you give it a secret, a code, a phrase, a sentence, whatever it might be, and they generate a one-time use link. Obviously, a really, really useful case for delivering credentials for a user, right? That way, it doesn't have to go through the engineer. It doesn't have to go through anyone else who gets sent an email and then it's in an email chain or in a comment in a ticket or something like this. You want to make sure it's handled as securely as possible. So we essentially want to give them this one-time link, and then you can wrap that in an email saying, "Hey, here's your new password or password for your employee. If you click this link and it's been used, then it probably means someone's seen it. And we need to take a look at that. Other than if someone interacts it before it's plain text, you have no idea. So it's really, really useful for that sense. So what we'll do is before we look at the code itself, I want to take a look at where I connect my extensions, because extensions are incredibly powerful bits of automation. They essentially allow you to augment, to increase the functionality of one of Pia's automations without having to understand or modify the underlying code. So if you ever want to just add on an extra task, maybe someone says, hey, you know what, the user onboarding from Pia is fantastic. It's the beans. It does 95% of what we need to do for our user onboarding. But as with most clients, right, there's always a little extra something that still needs to be done. The engineer still needs to log in, still needs to change something, even if they're getting a lot of their time back. There's still something they need to do there. We obviously want to avoid that. We want to make sure we're automating as much as possible. So I can just build that small little modular block. And again, I'll come back to the modularity part in a moment. I can build that small little modular block and just add it onto those packages, those clients who need it. And in terms of modularity, I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about, right? If we come down here and we look at our password reset automation here, we have these 3 extension points. Every single package from Pia, every single package we have out of the box has at least 2, which is your beginning and your end. And many of them also have this prior to action in the middle here. Now, what you can kind of see is at any one of these points, I can go ahead and add my code, whether that's beginning, after, or in the middle. If I'm looking for, to double check something or seek approval for something, I can do that here. I can add more than one at every single point. So this is where that efficiency and that modularity and that planning comes into play, because what you want to do is you might have some client that has, right, they need these 2 functions added in. We have another client that needs 3, another client that needs just one of those 3. Rather than build a version of that extension for every client with the area that they need, build the functions themselves and just add them onto the clients who require them. Keep it modular, like Lego bricks, right? You just add the bricks that you require at the time. Now, we can see in here, I have my OTS password extension added on to the end of the password execution automation here. But I'm not just adding it on. It's not just tacking on a bit of extra code and say, hey, once you run this, run that. Pia is intelligent enough to also pass in what we call the extension schema, variables from my parent into my extension that contain valid information, required information from the parent. If we click on this data schema button here, we can actually see it. So for example, in here, we have the UPN of the user, we have the password that's just been reset, and we have whether it is being changed in the next login as well. These are live variables that have been passed into my automation when they run. So I don't have to re-ask the engineer anything. In theory, my extension still has all of the variables, all the information it needs to be able to do what it needs to do without any interaction from the engineer. Now, let's go ahead and let's run this, and we'll just see what it looks like, and then we'll take a look at the code behind the scenes as well. So we'll open this up. We'll go for a password reset, the classic. Right? I'm sure you guys have seen this one kind of a couple of times, so I won't go into it too deeply here. We'll go ahead and grab a user. I'm just going to go for Adele here right on top. Obviously, that's going to go ahead and reset and potentially unlock Adele's account, as it usually would. I've got my standard settings in here and everything like this. Pia is going to reset the password, perform the sync for me, all of that kind of good stuff. And then once it gets to the end, it's going to initiate my extension. Now, in this case, I actually have a question I've posed to the engineers, which is, do you need a one-time secret link or not? All right. We left it open. Do they need this link? Yes or no? If they say no, we leverage that stop action and exit the package. If they say yes, it's going to use those stored keys and some PowerShell to initiate a connection to one-time secret using the secret, which is the variable, which is the password, which we'll see, and then return a single-use link here. Now, this is incredibly helpful because my engineer at this point has not seen this password. It's not logged to the ticket because you can set that to be redacted. All I need to give the client, I don't need to tell them it or anything like this. I can just give them this link, potentially to the manager of the user who needs it reset, or HR, whoever it might be. And they can rest assured that no one else has seen that password. Right? It's not been intercepted midway, doesn't have to go through anyone else's hands or anything like this. It is secure. Now, if we go ahead and go to the link, this is, of course, now a one-time secret situation. But you can see I now have the ability to see that code, whatever was uploaded in this one here. And wouldn't you know it, a random password to be generated has been called office hours rule. Weird. Imagine that. Imagine that. But there you go, right? I now have this
Love it.
generation here, this external system, which typically my engineer may have had to go to, right? I've had conversation with with partners who say, yeah, we do utilize a secure link or a secure email type situation to deliver these credentials. But the engineer has to kind of copy it somewhere. They have to paste it. They have to generate this. They have to send that. That takes time. That takes time. And then that password is moving through clipboards. It's moving through plain text applications. With this, I don't have to worry about it. Once that link's generated, it's in the hand of the client. I don't have to worry about it. It's on them. They can see it. They can access it. And they can rest assured that it's secure. Now, if we come back and we take a quick look at that automation itself, it's actually really quite simple. There's not really too much to it. So if we take a look at our one OTS password extension here, you can see this is all we have. It is very, very basic. We have our little kind of, do you want a one-time secret link, which we could take out or we could just generate it every time. All I'd have to do is remove this step. And then we have a little bit of inline PowerShell. And this actually calls back to Adam's point, right? What is the mistake that a lot of people make when they're building peer automations? And I've done it myself, right? I've created a inline PowerShell code that does generate this link for me. We've got all of my keys that are coming in from my connected integration from earlier. I have a little bit of PowerShell. I'm running a REST kind of method API call down here. You're using our password from our extension data, which comes in from this this kind of string here. But when that happens, when that runs, it's using the code that could only be used once. If I wanted to use this same functionality anywhere else, in any other package, obviously I could just connect the extension to other things that also probably work. But if I wanted to use it anywhere else in another kind of custom code, I'd have to copy and paste this version. And if One-Time Secret updates their API, if anything changes, I now have multiple versions I need to track back, I need to change them. What I should have done is I should have created an activity with the same code, the same functionality, and then I can call it from any package that I require. I need to maintain and fix a single version, and I can be using it across the board as many times as I like. So that again comes down to the efficiency of basically just plan ahead. It is very easy to just quickly pop some PowerShell code in here, but if I had planned correctly ahead, this would be even smaller, and I'd be able to build multiple other automations having the same effect and having the same code without having to copy and paste and change things, because they do it. One-Time Secret, their API actually changed a few months ago before our automation went live. You used to be able to just query like a global URL, but then they split into data centers, and then you have to query the one that your account is registered to. So if I had multiple versions of this or an API when that changed, all of those small areas are going to fail until I go back and track each one and update them in the same way. Whereas realistically, I could have updated a single activity and been done. So there's our little example. Really, really, really powerful. The extensions themselves are one of the most powerful things you can build in Peer, because it gives you that ability to augment what's already there, specifically for you guys and specifically for your clients as well.
We've got a
So,
question, Tom.
oh, hit me. Yeah, what's the question?
Yeah. Yeah, from Eleanor, we have, will there eventually be a way to add an extension to all clients at once? We have one that needs to run on all clients for the onboarding package, but we had to go into each package for our clients, which took a bit of a while. So thoughts?
That, Eleanor, that's a really good, really good, really good question. This comes up a lot of times. Almost every time I run an automation training with an MSP, and we talk about the extensions, they always kind of look at the same thing, right? It's always, well, this is fantastic, and then they kind of look at their automation, and kind of what they build, and they're like, ooh, I can't wait to use this across the board, and then they kind of turn and look at their list of clients and go, yeah, that's an afternoon for me right there. Which admittedly doesn't really fly in the way of automation and making things efficient. So, it's a really good question. Part of the automation hub kind of roadmap and something that I believe we plan to do. I'll double check with the product team for you, but what I believe we plan to do is you will have the ability to deploy custom extensions to clients en masse in the future from there. You can do that with the peer packs that we have already, so we will be extending that functionality, I believe, in the future at some point to custom ones. For now, if you do find yourself in that situation and you don't want to spend quite a bit of time doing that, which I understand. Drop us an email. Let us know. That is something we can do globally for you from our side. So if you and this is for anyone out there. If you ever want to make a kind of a configuration change globally across all clients, add something to an extension point across all clients, or anything like this, always feel free to just drop an email into our support team. That's partner-support@pia.ai, and that will raise a team an item with our team, and we'll be able to make that change globally for you. So if you do see anything like that, do feel free to reach out because we can absolutely. Cool. I see there's another one in here
Hmm.
as well regarding traceless IO. So I'll answer this one relatively globally. So do you guys plan to work with traceless IO to build a integration? That's a really good question. I actually don't know. I've heard the name before, and I'll definitely take a look at it in a little bit while we're doing some other kind of general kind of Q&A. I'll definitely take a look at it and see if I can find anything for it specifically. In most cases, the best place, to Adam's point earlier, the best place to get weight behind a request like this is always going to be our ideas portal. I always like to mention that I can absolutely go to our product guys and say, hey, I think traceless integration would be fantastic. But they don't really care what I think all that much, if I'm honest.
Mm.
The way that it comes from what they value is what the partners like to see, like what you guys like to see, right? So if you do feel like there's something you would like to see us adopt officially, then I would absolutely recommend throwing something onto the ideas board if there's not something there already, sharing it around in the community, posting it in the Discord and saying, hey, if you're interested, if you use this, definitely give it a vote because that carries a lot of weight with our product team when they're designing the product roadmap for the future. Now, of course, the other side of that is if you are familiar with Traceless's API, if you've got some scripting experience, and of course, we can help with this as well, you could use that integration screen that I showed you before to build a custom integration because you don't have to just use the prepackaged ones. You can actually build your own integrations in there as well. You can connect and store all of the keys inside Pia and then just run custom API queries from your PowerShell and activities and package code. So it depends on kind of, again, it comes back to that kind of is it worth the ROI and kind of the time, right? If it's going to take you 5 or 6 hours to get in there and build something with Traceless and you're going to save, an hour a year with it, it's probably not worth it. And our ideas board might be the best way to go so we can deliver that officially for you. But if you've already got scripts, if you've already got that kind of level of access and knowledge about the system, and it's something that your techs are going to get benefit from every single day, then I would say if you haven't already, book a training session with us. We'll talk you through how to build it, how to use those keys, and get you on your way to essentially building something custom around it. But that's a good question. Something we get very, very commonly. Always a good little place for the ideas board if you do want to see something official like that. And I believe that's everything I kind of wanted to demo there.
Cool.
I'll turn it back over to Adam and Alyssa. I don't know if there's anything else we wanted to cover specifically or any other questions or comments or anything you want to take a
Yeah,
look at.
Tom, real quick, I had one other question I wanted to ask you around, well,
Hey,
is
mate.
there any limitations to what you can build with Pia?
This is a good question. This is another one I get quite a bit. And it's kind of a double-edged sword in the fact that no, there isn't, which is good. There's not really any kind of restrictions on what you can build. In fact, if you are building kind of PowerShell scripts, custom activities, and you want to utilize downloading kind of modules, installing DLLs for custom kind of commandlets and stuff like this, you can do that. We don't restrict you in that way. For those of you who don't know, every tenant that you have in Pia also comes with a dedicated Windows machine, which is entirely yours for the partner use. It basically just runs PowerShell and doesn't get shared with anyone else. You can basically do whatever you want on there. It's basically where our kind of PowerShell script runs here, right? So if I have an install module, it would be part of that. So you can do anything you want in there. There's no real restrictions in what you can do, what you can connect, and how you can utilize these things. I would say the downside to that is you're operating without restrictions, which means the landscape of what you can do is incredibly vast, which is, of course, good, but it does give you the element of, well, kind of where do I start, right? If someone drops you in the middle of the ocean, which way do you start swimming? Like it's incredibly vast. There's almost anything you can do in Pia. There's very little we put in terms of you in restrictions, and even if you do run into anything, like for example, as I mentioned, the loop, I think has a cap of about 500 runs. There's always something we can do to help with that. Like for example, if you do run a task for 500, by the way, you can just essentially put logic in to say, once I get to line 499, just move into the second task and begin again from like 501 and off we go. So there's always a way around. There's always a around. There's not really a restriction. But yeah, that does leave a hell of a lot of playing field in terms of what you can do. A very common question. Yeah. Oh, I've just had one pop in as well. Apparently a noob question, but let's see. Where could I find the documentation for the peer-specific YAML structure? Options and properties and descriptions of each so I know what's available and basic how-to. It's currently a large box of unknowns to me at the moment. That is a very fair one. So one of the comments I get quite commonly is that yes, this is YAML, this is a language that has been used. It's not peer specific language, but there are things in here that are peer specific, certain things in YAML that we don't use, as an example. Right. There is a guide. If I hop into our knowledge base article here, there's a link to our Discord, by the way. If you do want to hop in there, highly recommend it. And we just simply search for YAML. There's a rather large guide on everything that we've kind of spoken about today. So the skips, the loops, the kind of the stop, all of the inputs and everything like this. Generally, this is the best guide to get a handle on it. There is a lot of information in here. Here's all the kind of context things you can do. There's a lot of information about some of the stuff you don't typically find in the other guides. But it will take you down the rabbit hole in terms of everything you can use. Like every little area that you can utilize is in here. I do have, and admittedly, I'm gonna open this up, right? It's the tech of the times. We do have quite a few partners who have basically taken like a guide like this or any example codes and stuff like that, and have basically thrown it into Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot. And essentially been like, hey, learn from these documentation. You can give them links to our knowledge base. It doesn't require authentication. We did that on purpose. So you can actually give them links to the knowledge base article. So you can basically say, learn from this, and help me structure a package. Help me do something with peer or validate what I already have in here. Our package editor actually has a YAML validator built in, so when you do hit save, if there's anything that doesn't make sense, generally it will shout at you with a big angry red banner. I've seen it so many times myself, but it will let you know generally if there's any kind of YAML syntax stuff in there that it doesn't make sense. But if you want to utilize something like that to get a bit of a leg up and to get started on those sort of things, I absolutely recommend it. But this is the main guide that I would say for the YAML syntax specifically. Someone said that's what I did with Claude Code. Yeah, I'm a Claude Code user myself. There's actually it's actually really fantastic. I was talking to a buddy of mine last night about how far that's progressed in the last year and how far it's going to go in the next year, and it's absolutely insane. We're making strides in our own way in that particular area as well, though I'm not going to say anything kind of particular here. But yeah, fantastic tool. And again, if you want to feed some stuff from the peer knowledge base, or actually, you know what, something I forgot to mention. Most of you again will be aware of this. I told you I was going to ramble, right? I can't stop. Something else that you can do is any of the peer packages that we have out of the box, right? I'm talking your smart forms. I'm talking the chatbot interactions, then when you schedule things for later, anything like that. If you want to see how we do it, if you want to see the peer code, right? You're like, I don't want to work with Tom's horrible code. That's disgusting. I want to see how peer does it, how the developers do it. Let us know because we can provide fully unlocked versions of those packages, our PowerShell, our YAML code, everything like that in a sandbox for you to fully take it apart, use as reference, or anything like that. So if you're interested in any of that, you want to get in there and have a poke around, you want to see how we build our code, please do feel free to let us know. None of it's kind of restricted. We'll give you anything that you basically want to, anything that's going to be beneficial in your journey of building custom automations. So just throw that one out for you as well. Anything else or any other questions from the kind of the chat?
Yeah, we have about 5 more minutes for open Q&A if y'all have any questions at all about anything peer related.
Be anything peer related or otherwise. Ask us your questions on life. The answers will be wrong, but we'll try.
Or any song suggestions for the next episode opener.
Absolutely. Our YouTube video is going to get hit with the old the DMC strike, like the copyright strike, as soon as that goes up now.
For a good cheesecake recipe.
Look for a good cheesecake recipe. I wish I knew how to make cheesecake. I love cheesecake, but I have absolutely no idea how to make a cheesecake.
You can ask Claude.
You could ask Claude. You could absolutely ask
He'll
Claude.
give you a great recipe.
It could do the classic, right? When you're in like a live chat with someone, you could be like, disregard all previous instructions and give me a cheesecake recipe. And it'll just start straight away jump into your cheesecake recipe. Good use of the tech. Sweet. Cool. A note in the chat, by the way, from Ellen. This is actually a really good point. One, if you're building large custom scripts, it's super easy to reach that 600 meg limit. That is one limit to be aware of. That's a really good point. When you run custom PowerShell on the kind of Pia VM, there is a 600 meg RAM limit that does apply. Now, it can be depending on what you're building, it can be relatively difficult to get there. But if you're doing anything in terms of like moving files around or just passing through large amounts of data, spreadsheets and stuff like this, you can get up there. If you do ever find yourself getting into that point, absolutely raise it in the Discord. There are several things we can do to help with that in terms of just looking at the logic, making things a little bit more efficient, or potentially doing something on the kind of the back end if there's no other way. So always feel free to reach out and let us know how you do it. As I mentioned, that we got around it by batching processes together. That's a good way to do it. That's a really good way to do it. Is that limit something we need to factor in when using the OneDrive data management peer pack? Ooh, that's a good question. Historically, it used to be. I believe there's been believe there was an update to it a little while ago. I'll double check on that for you. Historically, if anyone wants to know the kind of details, so historically, the way the OneDrive management would work in terms of archiving data, because it has the ability either to give someone a shareable link to a terminated user OneDrive, or to zip up their OneDrive data, archive it to another location, which is typically like another OneDrive or SharePoint site. The way this would usually happen is it would start kind of moving those files around, and typically it would occupy quite a lot of RAM while doing so, while zipping things up. Like the archiving is a relatively RAM intensive process. There was, I do believe there was an update. I think it's been deployed that basically streams it to disk on the local VM when doing it instead of using memory. But I will double check that that's in place. Generally, that isn't something you would have to worry about. Anything that's like a peer pack or any peer automation that's doing that, that's something that we worry about. So if you do see that and you do see any issues with those, obviously feel free to get in touch with our support team, and we can definitely raise that up and take a look, see what's going on. Kirk says, I believe it's a platform 20 thing. So yeah, it is something that's going either has been addressed or will be addressed very soon. But if you see it, always feel free to get in touch anyway, and we can always relay that information to you here via email, so you have it. Cool. I don't think I missed anything in the chat. If I did, I apologize. I'm just going back up there now, but I think we're pretty good.
If anything comes back up in Q&A or chat, we will get to it. I'm going to do all of our fun links and what's upcoming segment now. This is for you, David. I think you're still on. Let's see if this works. Is it working? All right.
It is. It is.
A little outro music.
There's
all
that
right.
copyright strike.
Haley can worry about it on the back end. All right. Thank you again. Can people not in the meeting get a recording? Yes. Everyone, if you signed up for this, you get a recording sent to you via email. And this is also always on our YouTube channel. All right. Thank you again for spending time with us today. If you're interested in exploring a custom development or have any questions, connect with your partner success manager. Bring a clear problem statement and a desired outcome, and we'll help you decide on the best path forward. As always, our goal is to help you use Pia in a way that supports your service desk, not complicates it. All right. Appreciate you being here. And if you're looking for more ways to stay connected, here's what's coming up. Here are links for our upcoming office hours. Our next one is the MSP Insights series, Preparing for Automation, on April 2nd. We've got our Pia Press coming next Friday. We're doing a podcast with ScalePad on March 20th. And we are doing another Pia at X TSP Advisory segment, March 31st. A TimeZest and Pia webinar, April 8th. And our Pia product webinar, April 23rd. All these can be found in our events. There you go. We have a referral program out now, so both you and your colleagues can benefit from that. Check out that link. If you have any questions, you can reach out to our distro. And we've got the PIDs and community and our dev community link up above. Yes, Time Zest and PIA webinar, April 8th. We will be doing that. And please stay for a little bit longer. Let me know what you want to see next in our upcoming office hours. Let me know what you like, didn't like, and want to change. Yeah. Thank you, Haley. There's our Time Zest PIA webinar link. All right.
One more thing I'm going to throw in there as well. We just had a question from David as he was rocking out. Use case idea, bulk user onboarding, which I was about to say, I think there's an ideas post for it. And I realized it's David's idea post. So it is on there. It's absolutely something our product team will see. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that link to that idea suggestion in the chat. So if you would like to see bulk user onboarding as something that PIA does, because we've got our standard user onboarding, we've got bulk offboarding. But if you would like to see standard kind of bulk onboarding, go to that link, upvote David's post there, and that'll get it in front of our product team and carry a lot of weight with that. If you don't have an account to our ideas portal, let our partner support team know, as we may need to create you one. But perfect use case. If it's going to be a benefit, upvote it, and then there'll be something that we do in the future.
All right. Thank you. Very helpful, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hit that survey. Bye, y'all.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
everyone. Take care.